Most people spend their entire lives running from the very truths that could set them free. What if I told you that the darkest lessons you've been avoiding are actually the keys to becoming completely unstoppable? Look, we've been fed this fantasy that life should be comfortable, that we should avoid pain, and that happiness means having everything figured out. But here's what nobody wants to admit. The people who truly become unstoppable aren't the ones who avoided the darkness. They're the ones who walked straight into it, learned its lessons, and came out transformed. Today, we're going to explore 8 dark truths that most people spend their whole lives running from. But once you understand them, really understand them, nothing can stop you. You know that feeling when you're lying in bed at night and your mind won't shut off? You're thinking about all the things you need to do, all the ways you might fail, all the people who might judge you. You're stuck in this endless loop of worry and planning and trying to control everything around you. And the harder you try to control things, the more out of control you feel. Here's the thing. We've built our entire lives around trying to avoid discomfort. We scroll through our phones to avoid boredom. We stay in jobs we hate because we're afraid of uncertainty. We keep toxic people in our lives because we fear being alone. We chase success thinking it'll finally make us feel complete. And somehow, despite having more comfort and convenience than any generation in history, we're more anxious, more depressed, and more lost than ever. The problem isn't that life is hard. The problem is that we've been taught to believe it shouldn't be. We've been sold this idea that if we just work hard enough, plan well enough, and control enough variables, we can create a life free from pain and struggle. But that's not how any of this works. And deep down, you already know that. Your death is coming. And that's your greatest gift. Let's start with the darkest truth of all. You're going to die. Not someday in some abstract future. Actually die. Everything you are, everything you've built, every memory, every achievement, every relationship, gone. And you have no idea when. Now, most people hear this and they either push it away or they spiral into existential dread. But here's what changes everything. Your death isn't a problem to solve. It's not something that happens at the end of your life. It's happening right now. Every second that passes is a second you'll never get back. That version of you from yesterday, dead. That opportunity you didn't take last year, dead. That relationship you kept putting off fixing, dying. When you really grasp this, not just intellectually, but in your bones, something shifts. Suddenly all the stupid drama doesn't matter anymore. The person who cut you off in traffic, who cares? The co-worker who got the promotion instead of you, irrelevant. The embarrassing thing you said 3 years ago that you keep replaying in your head, meaningless. You start asking yourself the only question that actually matters. If I only had a short time left, would I spend it doing this? Would I spend it with these people? Would I spend it worrying about this? And most of the time the answer is no. But here's the thing, you do only have a short time left. You just don't know how short. People who become unstoppable have looked death in the face, and instead of turning away, they let it guide them. They let it burn away all the nonsense. They let it show them what actually matters. They stop living like they have forever and start living like every moment counts. Because it does. You are not your thoughts, and that's terrifying. Here's something that'll mess with your head. That voice in your mind right now, the one that never shuts up, the one commenting on everything, judging everything, planning everything, that's not you. You are the one listening to the voice. You are the awareness behind the thoughts, not the thoughts themselves. Think about it. If you were your thoughts, who's the one watching them? When you have two conflicting thoughts, who's the one noticing the conflict? You can observe your thoughts, which means you must be something separate from them. This sounds like some abstract concept, but it changes everything. Because most of us are completely identified with our thoughts. We think every anxious thought is a real threat. Every negative thought is the truth. Every desire is something we must pursue. We're like people watching a movie who forgot it's a movie and think the screen is real life. Your thoughts lie to you constantly. They tell you you're not good enough when you are. They tell you everyone's judging you when they're not. They create problems that don't exist and ignore solutions that do. They replay the past and rehearse the future while missing the only moment that's actually real, which is this one. When you realize you're not your thoughts, you stop being their prisoner. You can watch an anxious thought float by without believing it. You can notice a craving without acting on it. You can observe anger without becoming it. You create space between stimulus and response, and in that space you find freedom. Most people are so lost in their thoughts they don't even realize they're lost. They think they're thinking when really they're being thought by their conditioning, their past, their fears. Becoming unstoppable means stepping back and watching the show instead of being tangled up in it. Suffering is optional, but pain is not. Life is going to hurt. People you love will leave. Things you build will fall apart. Your body will age and break down. You will fail. You will be rejected. You will experience loss. This isn't pessimism. This is just how life works. Pain is part of the deal. But here's where most people get it completely wrong. They think pain and suffering are the same thing. They're not. Pain is what happens. Suffering is what we add on top of it. You lose your job. That's pain. But then you spend 6 months telling yourself you're a failure, that you'll never succeed, that everyone thinks less of you now. That's suffering. And that part, that's optional. Someone breaks your heart. That's pain. But then you spend years replaying every conversation, wondering what you did wrong, building walls around your heart so you never get hurt again. That's suffering. And that's your choice. See, pain is clean. It comes, it hurts, and if you let it, it goes. But we don't let it go. We grab onto it. We build stories around it. We make it mean something about us. We use it as proof that life is unfair, or that we're not good enough, or that we can't trust anyone. We turn one moment of pain into years of suffering. Unstoppable people feel pain just like everyone else. They just don't add the extra layer of mental torture on top of it. When something hurts, they let it hurt. They don't pretend it doesn't. They don't suppress it or avoid it. But they also don't turn it into an identity. They don't make it mean something it doesn't mean. The paradox is that when you stop resisting pain, it hurts less. When you stop fighting reality, reality stops fighting back. The suffering comes from wanting things to be different than they are. The pain comes from things being exactly how they are. Once you understand the difference, you stop creating your own hell. You don't control anything, and that's liberating. You want to know what makes most people's lives miserable? You can't control what other people think of you. You can't control whether you get sick. You can't control the economy, the weather, or the traffic. You can't control whether people love you back. You can't control most of what happens to you. And yet we spend most of our energy trying to do exactly that. We manipulate, we plan, we worry, we try to predict every outcome. We try to force people to behave the way we want them to. We try to make the world conform to our expectations. And when it doesn't, because it never does, we feel like failures. But here's the truth that nobody wants to hear. The only thing you actually control is how you respond to what happens. That's it, not what happens. Just your response to it. You don't control whether you get rejected. You control whether you let rejection define you. You don't control whether people appreciate your work. You control whether you do work you're proud of anyway. You don't control whether you succeed. You control whether you give your best effort. When you really get this, when you stop trying to control the uncontrollable, something amazing happens. You become free, because you're no longer dependent on external circumstances for your peace of mind. You're no longer at the mercy of other people's opinions or decisions. You're no longer crushed when things don't go according to plan. Unstoppable people aren't unstoppable because nothing stops them. Things stop them all the time. They're unstoppable because they don't need things to go their way in order to keep going. They adapt. They adjust. They find another path. Because they're not attached to one specific outcome. They're committed to the process, not the result. Your comfort zone is killing you slowly. Everything you want is on the other side of fear. But not just any fear. The fear of discomfort. We've become so addicted to comfort that we've forgotten we're built for challenge. Your body is built to adapt to stress. Your mind is built to solve problems. Your spirit is built to grow through difficulty. But instead, we've created lives that are so safe and predictable that we're dying of boredom while calling it security. You stay in the dead-end job because at least you know what to expect. You keep the same routine because it's comfortable. You don't start that project because you might fail. You don't have that difficult conversation because it might be awkward. You don't take the risk because you might lose what you have. And day by day, year by year, your world gets smaller, your confidence shrinks, your dreams fade, not because you failed, but because you never tried, because you chose comfort over growth. And here's the dark truth. Choosing comfort is choosing slow death. Every time you avoid discomfort, you're telling yourself you can't handle it. Every time you stay safe, you're reinforcing the belief that the world is dangerous. Every time you choose the easy path, you're getting weaker, and the weaker you get, the scarier everything becomes. It's a vicious cycle, but it works in reverse too. Every time you do something that scares you and survive, you get stronger. Every time you push through discomfort, your capacity for discomfort grows. Every time you choose courage over comfort, you expand your life. Unstoppable people aren't fearless. They feel fear constantly. They're just more afraid of staying the same than they are of change. They're more afraid of regret than failure. They've realized that the discomfort of growth is nothing compared to the slow suffocation of a life unlived. Nobody is coming to save you. This one hurts, but you need to hear it. Nobody is coming to save you. Not your parents, not your partner, not your friends, not the government, not some future version of yourself. You are it. We spend so much time waiting for the right opportunity, waiting for someone to give us permission, waiting for conditions to be perfect, waiting for someone to rescue us from our problems. And while we wait, life passes by. You think once you find the right relationship, you'll be happy. But relationships don't make you happy. They magnify what's already there. You think once you get the right job, you'll feel fulfilled. But jobs don't give you purpose. You bring purpose to your job or you don't. You think once you have enough money, you'll feel secure. But security doesn't come from your bank account. It comes from trusting yourself to handle whatever comes. The harsh truth is that you are responsible for your life. Not responsible for everything that happens to you, but responsible for what you do with what happens to you. You're responsible for your growth, your healing, your happiness, your success, your failures, all of it. This isn't fair. You didn't choose your circumstances. You didn't choose your starting point. You didn't choose the challenges you face. But you're the only one who can do anything about them. And waiting for someone else to fix it is just another way of giving up. When you really accept this, when you stop looking outside yourself for salvation, you tap into a power you didn't know you had. Because you stop being a victim and become the creator of your life. You stop making excuses and start making decisions. You stop hoping things will change and start changing things. Unstoppable people know they're on their own. And instead of finding that depressing, they find it liberating. Because if nobody can save them, nobody can stop them either. They're not waiting for permission or approval or the perfect moment. They're taking responsibility and taking action. Your identity is a prison you built. Who are you? No, really. Strip away your job, your relationships, your achievements, your possessions. Who are you underneath all of that? Most people can't answer that question because they've confused themselves with their roles. I'm a lawyer, I'm a parent, I'm an athlete, I'm the funny one, I'm the responsible one, I'm the person who always helps others. And then life changes. You lose the job, the kids grow up, the injury ends your athletic career, and suddenly you don't know who you are anymore. Here's the problem. Every identity is a limitation. When you decide you're a certain type of person, you limit yourself to behaviors that match that identity. If you identify as someone who's not good with money, you'll sabotage yourself financially. If you identify as someone who's not creative, you won't even try. If you identify as someone who's been hurt, you'll keep finding evidence that the world is against you. Your identity determines what you think is possible for you. And most of our identities were formed when we were young, based on limited experiences and other people's opinions. You're still carrying around beliefs about who you are that a 5-year-old formed, and you're letting them run your life. But here's the thing. You're not your identity. You created it. Which means you can change it. You can try on new identities like clothes. You can expand beyond the narrow box you've been living in. You can become someone completely different than you were yesterday. Unstoppable people don't cling to one fixed identity. They're fluid. They evolve. They're willing to let old versions of themselves die, so new versions can emerge. They don't say, I can't do that, it's not who I am. They say, I haven't done that yet, but I could become someone who does. The darkest part of this lesson is realizing how much of your life you've spent defending an identity that was never really you in the first place. How many opportunities you've passed up because they didn't fit your image of yourself. How many experiences you've missed because you were too busy being consistent with who you think you are. Meaning is made, not found. Here's the final dark truth. Life doesn't have inherent meaning. There's no cosmic purpose waiting to be discovered. No destiny written in the stars. No grand plan that makes everything make sense. This terrifies people. Because if life doesn't have built-in meaning, then what's the point? Why do anything? Why try? Why care? But flip it around. If life doesn't have inherent meaning, then you get to create your own. You get to decide what matters. You get to choose what you stand for. You get to make your life mean whatever you want it to mean. Most people spend their whole lives searching for their purpose like it's buried treasure. They think if they just look hard enough, try enough things, or meet the right person, they'll finally discover why they're here. But purpose doesn't work like that. You don't find it. You create it. You create it by deciding what you care about and acting on it. You create it by choosing what principles you'll live by. You create it by determining what kind of person you want to be and becoming that person. You create it by making things that didn't exist before, by helping people who need help, by standing for something even when it costs you. The meaning of your life is whatever you're willing to make it. And the darker truth beneath that? Most people never do. They live and die without ever making their life mean anything, because they were waiting for permission, or a sign, or the perfect calling. They were waiting for meaning to arrive instead of creating it themselves. Unstoppable people don't wait to find their purpose, they create it. They decide what they're about, and they go all in. They make their life meaningful through their choices and actions. They understand that nothing matters, which means everything can matter if they choose to make it so. So here's where all these dark lessons come together. Most people think being unstoppable means being fearless, confident, and in control. But that's not it at all. Being unstoppable means accepting the darkness. Accepting that you'll die. Accepting that you can't control most things. Accepting that pain is inevitable. Accepting that you're alone. Accepting that nothing has inherent meaning. But here's the paradox. Once you accept all of this, once you stop running from these truths, you become free. Free from the need for certainty. Free from the fear of loss. Free from the opinion of others. Free from your own limitations. You can't be stopped by failure because you expected it, and you're not defined by it. You can't be stopped by rejection because you're not seeking validation. You can't be stopped by fear because you've already faced your biggest fears. You can't be stopped by loss because you know everything is temporary anyway. You can't be stopped by uncertainty because you've let go of the need to control. This is what it means to be truly unstoppable. Not that nothing can hurt you, but that nothing can make you quit. Not that you don't feel fear, but that you move forward despite it. Not that you have all the answers, but that you're okay with the questions. Look, these lessons are dark for a reason. They're dark because they strip away all the comfortable lies we tell ourselves. They force us to look at reality without the filter of our hopes and fantasies. They demand that we grow up and face life as it actually is, not as we wish it were. But on the other side of that darkness is something incredible. Freedom. Real freedom. Not the freedom from consequences or challenges. The freedom to choose your response to anything. The freedom to create meaning in a meaningless universe. The freedom to be whoever you decide to be. The freedom to live fully, knowing it won't last forever. Most people will never accept these truths. They'll spend their whole lives running from them, building elaborate defenses against them, pretending they're not real. And that's fine. That's their choice. But if you're still here, if you've made it through all 8 lessons, then you're different. You're someone who's willing to look at the darkness and not turn away. And that makes you dangerous. In the best possible way. If this hit you different, watch the next video.